Part 53. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 521. East China Sea, Kingdom of Goa Windmill Village. In the tavern, everyone from the red-haired pirate group gathered here at this time. It's been a while since I came to Donghai. It seems that the controversy about them has also subsided. Recently, no one on the sea has paid attention to the news about their red-haired pirates. The proprietress of the tavern is called Maginot, and she is a beautiful girl. She has nothing against pirates like Shanks. And Shanks and the others didn't do anything messy in Windmill Village. Acting very kindly. At this time, Shanks was sitting in front of the bar, holding a newspaper in his hand and reading the news on it. Golden Emperor, Neutral Zone, tisk tisk, ugh, Shanks sighed helplessly. I always felt that compared to that guy Orgrim, his structure was still a bit inadequate. He, Shanks, secretly cooperated with the Navy Admiral. It sounds like he is also very powerful. Looks like. But look at Orgrim, he no longer bothers to hang around at this level. He directly started cooperation with the 5 Old Stars, which is 2 levels higher than Shanks. Even the commander-in-chief of the entire army, everything has passed. The most important thing is that he cooperated with the Navy Marshal. After wandering around the New World for a while, he rolled out of the New World in a mess. But Orgrim's cooperation with the 5 Old Stars, you look so prosperous. Why is there such a big gap between people? They are both pirates, why are you so coquettish? Captain, the closer the relationship between Orgrim and the world government is, the harder it will be for us to deal with them in the future. Lucky Lou held a chicken drumstick in his hand and said while eating. Shanks nodded and responded, it is difficult to deal with, but the more this happens, the more challenging it becomes. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a childish voice next to him, asking Shanks, aren't you very powerful? What king is from the Shichibukai? Are there any more powerful pirates than you? Who is Orgrim? Ha 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 ha, that's a lot Luffy, this Orgrim is indeed much more powerful than us now. It is precisely because of his power that we were kicked out of the New World and had to come to your East China Sea. Get settled, Shanks said while looking at the newspaper without looking back. Yes, the little guy sitting next to him is the grandson of the hero Garp, Monkey D. Luffy. He will be known as the protagonist in the future. No matter how powerful you are, you can't defeat his terrifying existence in his theatrical version. Yeah? Then when I go to sea and become a pirate, I will definitely help you defeat him, Luffy said enthusiastically. Shanks smiled, but didn't take the child's words seriously. He turned to look at Luffy and said, really? Then I'll look forward to it. What are you eating? Fruit? It tastes so bad. Bah bah, Luffy was holding half a purple devil fruit in his hand, with an expression as if he had eaten shit, and complained. Shanks' originally smiling expression suddenly became confused. Damn it, that's mine. Devil fruit. Hello. Spit it out. Shanks grabbed Luffy's feet, lifted him up, and shook him up and down, hoping to make Luffy spit out the devil fruit he had eaten in his mouth. Let me go. Don't be so stingy. Isn't it just a fruit? It tastes so bad that I won't eat it, Luffy struggled and complained. It's not about the fruit. If you eat this, you will become a landlubber, Shanks said in a panic. He likes Luffy very much and thinks that Luffy may be a good person in the future. But don't let your road become narrowed at a young age just because you accidentally ate a devil fruit. Especially, he hasn't investigated yet, what kind of ability does this devil fruit have? What if it's rubbish? Just as Shanks was thinking about this, Luffy's legs suddenly slid down and were stretched. His head fell directly to the ground. This strange scene made Shanks a little confused, and then Luffy bounced back with a pop. There is no doubt that the devil fruit has taken effect. This is rubber fruit, Shanks murmured in surprise. Huh? What happened to me? Luffy asks strangely. You're done. You ate the devil fruit. Although you gained new abilities, you became a landlubber and can't swim in the future, Shanks said very helplessly. There is no heartache fruit. After all, he doesn't care about the gain or loss of a devil fruit. He is just a little helpless. This guy Luffy, well, can't swim anymore. Luffy was shocked. Then how can I be a pirate? Ha 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 ha, Luffy, do you want to be greedy again? If you see this kind of fruit in the future, don't eat it casually. Next time, you won't be able to swim, you will explode and die, Lucky Lu said with a smile. Shanks was a little helpless. At this point, he had no choice. In this world, no one can return to his original state after eating a devil fruit. He will. Luffy pressed down on the seat, and Shanks said with a serious expression, it seems that it is time to popularize the knowledge of the sea to you, otherwise you will not know how to die by then. Luffy stretched out his hand and pinched his cheek. It felt a little strange, but he was very happy to hear that Shanks was going to tell him stories about the sea. He looked very interested. When Shanks saw this, he took a deep breath. He took a breath and said, the sea is extremely wide, and there are many fun things you can't imagine. This is the meaning of adventure. Today's world is divided into 6 seas, east, west, north, south, as well as the Great Sea Route and the Windless Zone. Among them, the subdivision of the Grand Line can be regarded as 2 sea areas, one is called Paradise, and the other is called New World. Shanks told Luffy this, and Luffy listened very seriously. As for how much I remember, I don't know. Maginot, who was in the tavern, was lying on the bar with a smile, looking at Shanks and listening to Shanks talk about the knowledge that she didn't know very well. A girl's feelings are always poetry. Maginot is in her prime, and of course she has fantasized about her significant other in her heart. As for Shanks, although he looks a bit sloppy, he is actually quite charming. In addition, after traveling all over the country for so many years, he has the unruly aura of a prodigal son, which is always very lethal to a girl like Maginot who has never seen much of the world. Yes, Maginot has a crush on Shanks. But Shanks is destined to be a prodigal son. There are 3 powerful forces on the sea, namely, the Navy headquarters, the 4 emperors, and the King's Shishibukai. They are just incompetent, but I am the leader of the King's Shishibukai, the red-haired Shanks boasted with a smile. Although they say there are 3 major forces, the Navy headquarters and the 4 emperors are really strong, and their king, the Shishibukai, is struggling. Shanks can be regarded as giving him face. It's gold-plated. But Luffy didn't know the twists and turns, and he looked at Shanks with admiration. What about Orgrim? The guy you just said was awesome, Luffy asked. Orgrim, Shanks felt a little irritable when he mentioned Orgrim. With him as your opponent, the pressure is really too much. That guy is currently one of the 2 most powerful pirates in the world. He is known as the King of the Night. I am afraid that no one in the world can defeat him in the dark, right? Shanks smacked his lips and said. You're not even that powerful, Luffy asked curiously. Shanks felt a little helpless, but still shook his head and said, no. At this moment, the door of the tavern was kicked open. Maginot, who was lying on the bar, listening to Shanks' story, was startled. He raised his head and looked outside. A group of mountains the thief came in. Sig, Mackinaw exclaimed. There are 2 groups of bandits near Windmill Village, one is Dodden and the other is Sig. However, Dodden still has some moral integrity. She does not rob ordinary people, but only attacks nobles. And he doesn't kill people randomly, he feels a bit like a thieves. But Sig is arrogant and will rob everyone. Shanks also looked over there with a somewhat irritable expression. Originally, the topic of conversation at this time was about Orgrim. He felt a little uncomfortable. There was also a guy who showed up and disturbed his drinking. Of course he was very annoyed. But Shanks wasn't very aggressive. Although he was annoyed, he didn't meddle in his own business. Pirates, Sig looked at the people in the tavern. Although it was the era of great pirates, Sig seemed to look down on pirates. He smiled and mocked. Only those who can't survive on the island will go to sea to become cowards. What pirate? However, people like Lucky Lu paid no attention to his intentions. Seeing that no one spoke, Sig did not continue to provoke. He walked to the bar and said, "Take out all the drinks." Maginot looked a little scared. He took out a bottle of wine from under the bar and said, "I'm sorry, today's drinks have been sold out. This is the only bottle left." Sig looked a little unhappy, looked at Shanks and the others, and said, "Are these useless pirates drinking my wine?" Shanks looked at Maginot, who looked a little embarrassed, and shook his head with a smile. He pushed the unopened bottle of wine beside him towards Sig and said, "If you don't mind, I'll give you this bottle of wine. Don't embarrass the little girl." Sig lowered his head and glanced at Shanks. Then, with a ferocious smile on his lips, he said, "Don't try to show off here. For a self-righteous guy like you, I killed 56 people." As soon as he finished speaking, Sig raised his hand, grabbed the wine bottle, and shot Shanks directly in the head. The Bandit King is so arrogant. It is said that in the original story, there were 160 pirates on the sea. The Emperor was killed 56 times by Sig, and only 4 of them, Shanks, were left. Shanks looked helpless, exhaled slowly, and reached out to pluck out the glass shards from his hair. "To be honest, if it were another time, whether you spit on me, pour wine on my head, or cause some unpleasantness like this, I wouldn't do anything to you," Shanks said slowly. Sig frowned slightly and said with some displeasure, "Who do you think I am? Do you have any dissatisfaction with me? Let me tell you, the Bandit King of this land is me, Sig. The bounty is 8 million Baileys." "Bandit King? Ha ha ha," Shanks sneered. As he finished speaking, he suddenly grabbed Sig's head, and then pulled it down neatly. Boom, with a sound, Sig's head was directly pressed against the bar by Shanks. Before the guy could struggle, Shanks grabbed the wine bottle beside him with his backhand, pointed it at Sig's head, and poured one bottle down. Unlike Shanks, Sig doesn't have such awesome ability to withstand blows. After a bottle of headshots, everyone is stunned. Shanks still didn't give up. He picked up all the empty bottles around him and smashed them one by one on Sig's head. Sig's younger brothers were all shocked and were about to come to rescue their boss. Lucky Lu and others also took action one after another. Once they came into contact, they were all killed. Shanks exhaled another breath and reached out to brush his red hair, which was stained with wine and wet. At this moment, the blood in Sig's head is all in his hand. "But you choose to trouble me when I'm upset, then it's your bad luck." After the fight, Shanks said, feeling comfortable all over. As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed Sig's hair, pulled the bloody head up from the bar, threw Sig to the ground, and he asked Lucky Lu and others throw it into the sea and feed it to the fish. This is a pirate, ruthless and cruel. Luffy and Maginot were stunned. Shanks then looked at Luffy and said, "Now, do you still want to be a pirate?" Luffy. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 522. Maginot looked at Shanks' handsome face with a stubble, and suddenly felt that this guy was really handsome. He casually killed the Bandit King Sig, who was raging around. "I feel like a little deer bumping around in my heart." Luffy came back to his senses, the shock on his face disappeared, and he said excitedly, "How cool. I have decided to go to sea in the future and become a more powerful pirate than you." Listening to Luffy's excitement, Shanks couldn't help but laugh after his speech, and the irritability in his heart also dissipated. "Ha ha 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 ha, yes, it will still be a few years before you go to sea. I will work hard and stand at a higher position, waiting for you to recover." Luffy. Shanks reached out and touched Luffy's head and said with a smile. "Well? Can't you take me with you?" Luffy asked with some dissatisfaction. Shanks smiled and said, "You are still too young. I don't plan to take you to the sea with a half-hearted person." "Ha ha ha, Captain, this little guy Luffy is so interesting, why don't you take him with you?" Jesus Bulletin said with a smile. "That's right, Captain," Lucky Lu also cheered. Shanks himself once followed Roger half-heartedly, and he also knew that many times, he was holding back the Roger pirates. But at that time, the Roger pirates were in the limelight. Wu-er, a master like a cloud, can naturally take care of him, and even take care of Bucky. But if he wants to return to the New World, he will have to face the 4 emperors. This kind of thing, he himself feels unreasonable, let alone bring along this kid Luffy. Isn't that a joke? In fact, in the original story, Shanks also returned to the New World after leaving the East China Sea, experienced several brutal battles, and finally ended up in 6 years before the story opened. The position of the 4 emperors was determined. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why he did not bring Luffy from the East China Sea. Listening to his friends teasing, Shanks turned his head and glared at them, and said, "There are only so many positions on the ship. If anyone wants to trade with Luffy, I don't have a problem with it." As soon as he finished speaking, Lucky Lu, Jesus Bulletin and the others all stopped talking. They turned around and started eating and drinking, as if Luffy didn't exist. Luffy looked at the lack of loyalty of these people and said angrily, "You are so uninterested. If you don't take me with you now, you will regret it in the future." "Ha ha 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 ha, the little guy is still angry," Lucky Lu laughed and joked. Maginot cleaned up the broken glass stubble on the ground and gave Shanks a strawberry pie. Shanks thanked him with a smile and asked Maginot again. His face turned red with embarrassment. But Shanks was destined to be a prodigal, and he knew he would never have a family. Although the East China Sea is good, and the Windmill Village is also good, the scenery here is only suitable for temporary viewing. One day, he wants to return to the New World, where he belongs. Eating strawberry pie in his mouth, Shanks seemed to have thought of something. He turned to look at Luffy and said, "By the way, you kid is always shouting for me going to sea to be a pirate. Then, in your mind, what does it mean to be a pirate? Gold? Treasure? That power? Status?" Luffy glanced at Shanks strangely and said, "Those are not pirates." "So what is a pirate?" Shanks raised his eyebrows and asked with great interest. "Free. What pirates want to pursue is freedom," Luffy said without hesitation. "Ha ha 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 ha, fair answer," Shanks said with a laugh. But before he could ask any more questions, Luffy said enthusiastically, "I don't want to be an ordinary pirate, I want to become the Pirate King like Roger." Roger, when Shanks heard this name, he felt a little emotional and murmured something like a memory. Power, fame, status. Wrong. These are not the Pirate King. The freest person on the sea is the Pirate King, Luffy said firmly. Looking at Luffy's determined expression, Shanks' memory was pulled back many years ago. At that time, he also asked Captain Roger how to become the Pirate King. At that time, the struggle for kingship on the sea was extremely chaotic. Shiji, Whitebeard, Red Earl, and various forces large and small were vying for the position of pirate kingship and hegemony. At that time, Shanks also thought that it was power, fame, and status. Wealth. But Captain Roger said with a smile, "Freedom, the freest man on the sea is the Pirate King." For a moment, Shanks saw the Roger he respected most in Luffy's little figure. "Captain's shadow. Why are you looking at me like that?" "Am I wrong?" Luffy asked strangely. Shanks came back to his senses and said with a smile, "Yes, you are right. The freest person on the sea is the Pirate King." After finishing speaking, Shanks turned to look at the straw hat he placed on the bar. "This is Captain Roger's gift to himself. I have always regarded it as a treasure and have carried it with me for so many years. Although people will die, their will be inherited." Shanks recalled Captain Roger's voice and smile, and couldn't help but sigh. "Luffy, we're leaving here," Shanks suddenly said. "Ah? Why? Haven't you been here all this time?" Luffy asked with some reluctance. "This is just the place where we will stay. I am also planning to go to other sea areas to explore again. When the opportunity comes, I will return to the New World," Shanks said in a deep voice. "Now, Orgrim has included Amazon Lily into their Avalon system. I'm afraid, after he completes the integration of Amazon Lily, the New World will be in chaos, right? Big Mom pirates, although Charlotte Lingling is not as good as Orgrim, she is not a real fool. She should be able to notice this. How will you save yourself? That's not right. Orgrim may not really attack her first. Maybe he will have a real showdown with the Whitebeard pirates? But this is always a possibility. It is impossible for the Big Mom pirates not to make preparations. Then, what choices and answers will Katakuri give? Shanks wants to wait and see until the situation becomes clearer." After putting these thoughts away, Shanks raised his hand and pressed his straw hat on Luffy's head before Luffy could say anything else. Luffy looked at Shanks in surprise, wondering what this guy was doing. "This hat was given to me by someone who is very important to me. To me, it is the most precious thing. Luffy, now, I leave this hat with you. In the future, we will on the sea, remember to return it to me when we meet again," Shanks said with a smile. For some reason, after listening to Shanks' words, Luffy felt a little excited and moved. But instead of crying, he said without hesitation, "Yeah. Leave it to me. Sooner or later, I will go to the sea to find you personally and return this hat to you. I'll be waiting for you," Shanks said with a smile. But he didn't have to leave now, so there was no need to be so sad. Soon, everyone started eating and drinking together again. At the same time, on the sea not far from the Windmill Village, a group of a warship from the Navy headquarters is sailing here. The collision angle of the warship is a dog head biting a bone. Although it looks a bit funny, this warship is famous. When Orgrim and Whitebeard saw it, they both have to frown and look at it seriously. Because this warship is the vehicle of Lieutenant General Garp, who is famous as a hob and a hero in the Navy. Standing on the deck of the warship, Garp did not wearing a large cloak with the word justice written on it. It is not the off-white suit that he always wears, but a fancy beach suit, cardigan, and shorts. He wears a pair of human resources slippers, which makes him feel extremely chic. And this time, he came to Windmill Village not to perform any mission, but to take a vacation. But at this time, Garp's expression was very ugly, even a little irritable, because he observed the Windmill Village not far away through the telescope. The red force of the red-haired pirates is indeed parked at the port. Garp has not come back for a while. Although he had heard about it before, Shanks and his gang of pirates had arrived. The East China Sea is coming. But Garp doesn't pay much attention. After all, Shanks has been in the East China Sea a lot before, and he seems to be looking for someone in the East China Sea. Even on his ship, there are friends from the East China Sea, such as that Jesus Bulletin. Therefore, it was reasonable for people to bring their crew members back to visit relatives. So Garp didn't mind his own business. Until he heard that the red-haired pirates stay in Windmill Village. At that time, Garp felt something was not good, but he also knew that Shanks was not a particularly aggressive pirate, so he was not so nervous. At that time, he had some things to deal with. Later, just as he was about to come to the East China Sea, that bastard Orgrim caused trouble again in Amazon Lily in the windless zone. He had to take time out to check in with Porosalino. He also learned the news that Polosalino was defeated at the hands of Orgrim. But warring states didn't seem to intend to pursue this matter. After suppressing the incident, there were no other arrangements. Garp was thinking about his grandson, but he didn't try to force himself. After finishing all these things, I really started to rush to the East China Sea. Now, I have just arrived. Since the red-haired pirates belong to the Shishibukai, they don't have to worry about the Navy attacking them for no reason. In addition, this is the East China Sea, and there is nothing that can threaten Shanks. Therefore, when the red-haired pirates were stationed in Windmill Village, no one was left to watch the ship or anything like that. The warships have all sailed into the port, and they have not been discovered by the red-haired pirates. They are all enjoying good food and drink in the village. Garp suddenly jumped from the warship to the dock of the port. It just so happened that the village chief Slap was here at this time. He was a little surprised when he saw Garp, and asked Garp, "Why are you back?" This is Garp's hometown. Although Slap is a small village chief, he still has a good relationship with Garp. Garp quickly asked, "Come back and see, Slap, these pirates didn't do anything to the village, right?" Slap glanced at the Red Fourth and shook his head. "Red Hair, the pirates are okay. Although I don't like them, they really didn't do anything bad. Although it is speculated that Shanks is not such a vicious person, he is somewhat worried." At this time, after hearing the answer from Mayor Slap, Garp was really relieved. But before he could say anything else, Village Chief Slap said with a strange expression, "But, Luffy has been hanging out with them lately, maybe you should pay attention." Garp's expression changed, and he became serious. He said, "That red-haired bastard, if he dares to do anything to Luffy, I can't spare him. They should all be in Maginot's Tavern now." Slap Village smiled and said, "Well, thanks a lot, Slap, I'm here to have a drink with you tonight. Now I'm going to go see what the red-haired guy is going to do." Garp nodded to Slap and said, "Well, go ahead, but Garp, the village can't stand your troubles." Slap nodded first, and then couldn't help but warn him. He knew very well how powerful Garp was, and that red-haired man was also a king of the 7 warlords. No matter what, if the two of them were to, there was a conflict, and even the small windmill village couldn't bear it. Garp's face stiffened slightly, and he nodded and said, "I understand. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 523. Come, let us celebrate the birth of the little pirate. Shanks raised his wine glass and greeted with a smile. The other members of the red-haired pirate group also raised their wine glasses with smiles. Pirates are always like this, no matter what reason or excuse, it could become the reason for the banquet. But at this moment, the door of the tavern was pushed open. Then, Garp, wearing a fancy beach suit, stood at the door with a look of anger on his face. Shanks saw when Garp showed up, everyone was shocked. "Cap," Shanks said in surprise. But soon, he calmed down again. Although he didn't inquire carefully, he knew to some extent that Windmill Village was the hometown of Garp. But he felt that he didn't do much here. It's an outrageous thing. It's all done in good order, and there's no bullying of men or women. At the same time, there is also the code of King Shishibukai. This guy Garp should not be here for him. Otherwise, you wouldn't be dressed so flashy, right? Grandfather, Luffy also looked at Garp in surprise. As soon as his voice fell, all the Shanks were dumbfounded. "What the hell? What did you just call him? Grandpa? Damn it! I seem to have really done something. What a big deal. I guided the grandson of the naval hero Garp towards the path of pirates. I also gave Captain Roger's straw hat to this kid." At this time, Shanks was very panicked. After a wave of tricks, Garp was really offended. If he were Garp, he would probably want to kill himself. Shanks can swear to God, he really doesn't know what Luffy is doing. This kid is Garp's grandson. After all, when he came to Windmill Village, this kid was living in the mud at the port, looking like no one cared about him. The grandson of a naval hero does not dominate the living area of Marineford. Living like mud in the port of this barren country village? Are you sick? Do you guys like to play this game of pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger? What is this? Are you having fun with the people? Who the hell would have thought will Garp's grandson look like this? Aren't you kidding me? Shanks looked at Luffy with a stiff face, and couldn't help but ask, speaking of which, I only know your name is Luffy, and I've never asked, where is your full name? Full name, Luffy glanced at Shanks strangely. Is this important? Isn't the name just a code name? Monkey D. Luffy, my full name is this, Luffy said. It's really Monkey. In other words, this kid is the biological son of Draco, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and the biological grandson of Garp. The last hope in his heart was also shattered. It's not because Garp is from the village that Luffy just calls him Grandpa. It's because they are really related by blood. Ahem. Shanks coughed, stood up and said, What, it's getting late. It's time for us to leave this village. See you later, Luffy. Yes, Shanks chose to run away without hesitation. Before Garp could react, he ran away quickly. I will never come to this ghost place in the East China Sea again. This simply made him feel sad. What a broken place. Captain Roger died in the East China Sea. Bucky broke up with him in the East China Sea. Mihawk once chased him in the East China Sea and entangled him for a long time. Now, he gave up the grandson of a naval hero in the East China Sea. You are lame for cheating. This is ridiculous. From now on, there will be no place for me in Donghai, so I can slip away. Lieutenant General Garp, I haven't done anything extreme here, and you probably won't be happy to see me, so just say goodbye. Shanks nodded to Garp and said. Then, he led his subordinates and walked towards the door of the tavern without saying a word. Garp looked at Shanks walking towards him and didn't say anything. And didn't intend to stop him. It seemed that this guy really didn't do anything messy. The village was very comfortable and was not affected. Luffy was also intact and there was no problem. Thinking of this guy, King Shichibukai identity, thinking of the instructions from Slap Village just now. Garp saw that Shanks was so eye-catching, and he didn't intend to cause trouble with him. But when Shanks walked up to Garp, he wanted to rub shoulders with him. As they passed by, Luffy suddenly held down the straw hat on his head and shouted, I will definitely go to the sea to find you, Shanks. This is our agreement. When the time comes, I will become more powerful than you, pirate. He said this. Shanks's face instantly turned the color of a bitter gourd. Damn it, are you so sensational? I am just unreliable. Can you give me a little wink? With your mouth open, won't I reveal your secret? At the same time, Garp's face suddenly turned dark, extremely dark. He pressed Shanks on the shoulder and said, You bastard, what did you say to my grandson? Pirates. Shanks said with a very helpless face, Really, Lieutenant General Garp, you should believe me. I didn't say anything more, nor did I specifically guide you. I didn't know that Luffy was your grandson. That's right, Grandpa, Shanks didn't guide me, I want to be a pirate myself, Luffy also said confidently. It seemed as if he was giving Shanks a helping hand. But as soon as he opened his mouth, Shanks almost cried. I beg you, please shut up. Red hair, Garp roared angrily. He could no longer hold back his anger. He pressed Shanks' shoulder with one hand and turned his other hand into a fist, hitting Shanks' chest. Shanks was also shocked. Iron Fist Garp is not called Iron Fist Garp for nothing. Captain Roger was punched hard, and he would spit out 2 mouthfuls of blood. No one in this world dares to underestimate Garp's fist. Don't get me wrong, Shanks screamed strangely, and only had time to pull out the griffin from his waist and block it in front of his chest. The next second, Garp's powerful fist hit the sword with great force. The pressure caused Shanks to stumble, and the floor was cracked by 2 steps. Hello. Garp, I am the king of the Shishibukai. You are violating this, Shanks couldn't help but scolded. Didn't you see what I'm wearing? I am no longer using my identity as a Navy man, I am simply doing things from the perspective of a grandpa, Garp cursed angrily, and then without saying a word, he punched out again. Shanks didn't accept Garp's fist at all, and he had no reason to fight Garp here. Just run away. This matter was so outrageous that he was in the wrong. So Shanks turned around and ran away without hesitation. What are you still doing? Run, Shanks shouted to his subordinates. This guy Maginot directly betrayed the revolution and shouted at Shanks, Mr. Shanks, here, the back door is here. Thank you, Shanks passed Maginot and thanked him at the same time. Garp was very excited and chased after him. Although he is a naval hero, Maginot is not afraid of him. For the sake of his first love, well, even though it's a secret love. In short, Maginot hugged Garp's waist and stopped him. Mr. Garp, the tavern, my tavern. Maginot. You, Garp looked at Maginot sadly and was speechless for a moment. Maginot is so weak, how could she really stop Garp? It's just that Garp didn't dare to use too much force, for fear of injuring the little girl he had watched grow up. Grandfather! What are you going to do? Luffy also jumped out and stood in front of Garp and asked. Garp was angry in his heart. He was not polite to his little grandson. He went up and punched Luffy on the head. The iron fist of love can even defeat the natural type, let alone Luffy, the rubber fruit. Of course, Garp doesn't know that Luffy accidentally ate Shanks' rubber fruit, otherwise he would really go crazy. It hurts, Luffy yelled while holding his head after being knocked over by Garp's punch. From now on, you will become an excellent navy. Don't be fooled by that bastard, Garp roared. No, I want to make my own decisions in my life. I want to be a pirate, and I want to become the pirate king like Roger. Luffy endured the pain in his head and yelled at Garp without giving in. Hateful. Red hair, Garp was furious. At this time, he also broke away from Maginot's pull, turned around and ran out of the main entrance of the tavern. Looking again, Shanks and his group were running wildly on the street towards the port. Garp he chased after him without hesitation and cursed angrily. Red hair. Don't tell me what kind of king you are, Shishibukai, you bastard, you are the pirate emperor of the New World, and I will beat you to death. Shanks ran and shouted. Misunderstanding, really a misunderstanding. Please listen to my explanation. I really didn't know Luffy was your grandson, Lieutenant General Garp. It's useless to say more, Garp roared angrily, exerting force with his feet. His figure rose into the air, brandishing his iron fist, and swung it towards Shanks. Shanks took a look and saw that a younger brother had already boarded the boat and started to raise the sail and anchor, but even if the Red Force is also a very powerful ship, but it also takes some time to prepare. So Shanks shouted, you go first, I will be behind. After saying that, he pulled out the famous sword Griffin, slashed in the air, and slashed towards Garp. Die, Garp shouted violently, and without holding back his fist, he punched up to meet the slashing attack, directly shattering Shanks' slashing attack. But the powerful aura and aftermath of the fight between the two also instantly shook the streets. Several houses in Windmill Village were washed away. Fortunately, there are not many people here now. Those who should go to farm are all going to farm. The people in Windmill Village are still very hard working. Boom, the iron fist and the blade collided. Garp looked furious, but Shanks still babbled, can you give me some face? If you do such a thing, I still want to give you face. Ridiculous, A flash of anger flashed in Garp's eyes, and he raised his leg and kicked Shanks in the chest. You really think I'm afraid of you? Think carefully. If we start here, what will happen to Windmill Village? What will happen to Maginot, Mayor Slap and the others? Shanks also raised his legs, directly blocked Garp's kick, and shouted. Armed and domineering confrontation instantly broke out from the two people, once again destroying some of the surrounding houses. Garp at this time there was also a hint of hesitation in his eyes. I really didn't do anything, Shanks added smoothly, and then, taking advantage of Garp's hesitation, he released his strength without hesitation, turned around and ran away. At this time, the Red Fourth had already left the port, and a person stood at his feet. Using his strength, Shanks' figure was ejected from the port like a cannonball. Garp instinctively took 2 more steps forward, but in the end, he stopped and faced the Red Foss on the sea. He cursed angrily, Red Hair, don't let me see you again. If we meet you on the sea, I will make you look good. Shanks didn't answer. He leaned against the mast and sat directly on the deck. He helplessly said to his friends around him, I really didn't expect that Luffy turned out to be Garp's grandson. This okay, if Luffy really goes to sea and becomes a pirate, we will have a deadly feud with Garp. The status of the King's Kabuki is not easy for this hobmeet. Ha 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 ha, Captain, if Luffy doesn't go to sea, won't your hat be doomed? Jesus Bulletin laughed and said. Only then did Shanks think of his hat. Damn. What a loss of blood. What if Luffy was educated by Garp and became a marine in the future? Wouldn't it be embarrassing? Wearing the one-piece straw hat navy. What have I done? Why is fate so unfair? Do you want to play with me like this? Luffy went to sea to become a pirate, and he and Garp have been fighting each other since then. Luffy became a navy, and Captain Roger the Hat is about to be put on the head of the navy. Damn it, Shanks was very confused. What on earth did I come to the East China Sea for? I never want to come to this damn place again. Sad. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 524. New World, Evernight Sea, Avalon. In Orgrim's courtyard, what was the Sphinx bragging to Orgrim at this time? Don't worry, I have a good relationship with that rotten gambler. Just leave that guy to me in the future. It won't be a problem. Sphinx patted her unimproved chest and said confidently. Orgrim looked at this bastard Lolita with some toothache. I believe you. When I can't see this little Lolita. Orgrim still misses her. He always feels that there is something missing around him. But after Runty came, it became more lively. But after all, it is still different from the Sphinx. But I really wait for this little girl. Lee came back, and as soon as she put on her stinky and unreliable posture, Orgrim was so angry that he wanted to grab her, put her on his lap and give her a spanking. But he sat aside. Queen Stussy, who liked the Sphinx very much, said with a smile, really? It's really reliable, then he will leave it to you from now on. The Sphinx didn't think there was anything wrong at all, and said happily, Humph, you know what's going on, just leave it to me, I'm sure there will be no problem. Queen Stussy wasn't angry either. Instead, she rubbed the Sphinx's head with a doting smile. The Sphinx narrowed its eyes, looking like it was enjoying itself, like a kitten. Orgrim didn't bother to pay attention to this little loli anymore, and he couldn't even ask her anything. He picked up an apple and was about to take a few bites, but the Sphinx snatched the apple away from him. Orgrim didn't pay much attention, just thinking that the little guy wanted to eat, so he picked up another orange. But before he could finish his move, the Sphinx swaggered and placed the apple on Orgrim's head. You bastard! Orgrim looked a little annoyed and wanted to say something while reaching for the apple on his head. But he didn't even touch the apple. The Sphinx quickly stretched out his index finger, turned into a muzzle, and said onomatopoeically bang. The next second, the apple on Orgrim's head exploded. It opened, and Orgrim's head was poured with juice and fruit crumbs. The Sphinx didn't notice Orgrim's annoyed expression at all. He still laughed loudly and said, "Ha ha ha ha, this is the feeling. You can't find this feeling outside. I'm finally home. You little bastard, I want you to experience the dangers of the world." Orgrim raised his hand and grabbed the Sphinx's arm. At this time, the Sphinx seemed to have recalled the fear of being dominated by Orgrim. His expression suddenly changed and he exclaimed, "Save me, Stussy." Stussy was still smiling at this time, motionless, looking at this little loli who was seeking death in a funny way, and there was even some expectation in her eyes. Orgrim was not polite to this bastard loli. "What?" "Grab her arm, lift it up, and pull her up into the air." Then he presses her down on his legs, raises his hand and slaps her directly on her buttocks. "Ah! It's rude for you to treat a lady like this. Let me go, you bastard lecherous captain," the Sphinx cursed as he struggled. "You fucking named your ship the Queen of Infinite Firepower Explosion that will make your family skyward. How dare you say something like a lady to me? I'm not interested in your little body at all. Don't worry, I just want to spank you." Orgrim also cursed. "Just wait, I'll shoot you in the head, bastard Orgrim." "Let me go," Sphinx yelled. At this moment, Lucci also walked in from outside the courtyard. Seeing Sphinx being beaten on the leg by Orgrim, he was a little surprised at first, and then very quickly she has a calm expression that is not surprising. There is even some joy in her eyes. "You are a bastard witch who always bullies me outside. Now that you are back, Boss Orgrim is finally going to deal with you. I am so happy. I even want to be happy. Turn on the electricity, do a backflip or something." But soon, Lucci stopped looking at the crying Sphinx, and instead looked at the two brothers and sisters who were watching the fun. "Hey, newcomer, my name is Lucci, and I cover this courtyard. You two, just hang out with me from now on," Lucci said jokingly, while reaching out and patting Peggy Wan's little head. He felt that this action should express friendliness and intimacy. Peggy Wan didn't think there was anything wrong with it. For Lucci was also very curious, smiled and was about to say hello. But Runty was immediately furious. "You bastard, how dare you hit my brother?" At the same time as the words fell, Runty exerted force on her feet and hit Lucci's stomach. "Runty's head butt," Runty yelled. Lucci is in a completely relaxed state here, because this is their own people, their home and base camp. Of course, there is nothing to be wary of. So even if Runty's strength is not worth a mention, but this sudden headbutt still caught Lucci off guard. Lucci didn't even say anything. He was immediately knocked to the ground by Runty. Peggy was dumbfounded and quickly hugged Runty's figure and shouted, Sister, what are you doing? Senior Lucci is joking with us." Only then did Runty realize what happened. Feeling the same, he was stunned for a moment, then scratched his head and said, "Isn't he bullying you?" "Which eye of yours saw him bullying me?" Peggy said without tears. At this time, Lucci also got up from the ground. He didn't have any injuries. He didn't even feel much pain. He looked at Runty's half-animal dragon girl with some surprise. He looked like one and said, "Ancient species? Dragon fruit? Are you scared?" Runty said with some pride. "Ha ha 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 ha, you are very interesting. I am also an animal type. We will be a family from now on." Lucci wasn't angry at all, he said with a smile. On the contrary, Peggy's words of Senior Lucci made him feel comfortable all over. "I am finally a senior too." Runty felt a little embarrassed when she said this, scratched her head and said, "Just now, sorry." At this moment, Gangplank came in from the outside with a document in his hand and looked at Orgrim beating the Sphinx violently, while Lucci and Runty were playing around. I felt happy for a while and said, "This courtyard hasn't been so lively for a long time. I really miss it." Plank. Help me, the Sphinx looked at Gangplank with tears in his eyes and shouted. Gangplank looked at the apple pulp clattering on Orgrim's head, shook his head in amusement and said, "Bless yourself. Hello. After all, I am also your eldest sister," the Sphinx shouted unwillingly. "Okay, okay, I'll save you." Gangplank joked with a smile, then looked at Orgrim and said, "Master Hammer, there is interesting news in the dark world. Do you want to read it?" Orgrim was addicted to the hand at this time. He felt refreshed all over. The little butt of the Sphinx was still so tactile. "I love it. I just taught this stinky guy a lesson." She was just a little lowly, and Orgrim had no intention of actually doing anything to her, so he let go of the Sphinx and said, "If you do this next time, I won't make your butt swollen, Orgrim." The Sphinx quickly hid behind Queen Stacy, wiped her tears and said, "Stacy, you are not loyal, we are good sisters, and you don't even save me." He, Sphinx, do you want to eat an orange?" "I'll peel it for you," Queen Stacy smiled softly. The Sphinx really cared about eating and not fighting. In a blink of an eye, he forgot about Stacy's treachery and said with a happy face, "Eat. I like the oranges you peeled the most." Orgrim was also a little bit confused. She looked helplessly at this stupid little lowly and the sinister queen, then turned to Gangplank and asked, "If you are interested, show me what interesting news it is." "Here," Gangplank smiled and handed the document in his hand to Orgrim. Orgrim opened it and took a look. It was a bounty in the dark world. Yes, the Navy has bounties, and the dark world has a set of bounties. However, most of the bounties offered by the Navy are for villains, pirates, etc., and they want heads. But in the dark world, the bounties advertised include everything. Some want human organs, some want devil fruits, and some want some weird things. Of course, there are also bounties on other people's heads. Even Orgrim and the others are on the list. That's right, the top boss of the dark world is marked on the dark world's head bounty list. It's so outrageous. But it seems reasonable. Chaos, that's what it often is. Orgrim has never withdrawn his bounty, just leave it hanging. What can I do? I have been in the Navy for more than 10 years, but I am still living a happy life. And it's not just Orgrim and the Warhammer pirates, there are Whitebeard, Kaido, Charlotte Lingling, etc. And Charlotte Lingling's head was the bounty offered by Orgrim, 5 billion belly. Just think of it as a little fun. And his head was worth exactly 10 billion. Although he didn't know who the target was, Orgrim suspected it was Charlotte Lingling, that dead old woman. At this time, Orgrim was holding a bounty on the head of the dark world. And the person on top is King Shichibukai, red-haired Shanks. Orgrim was a little surprised. Although Shanks looks like he's dancing, in fact, he rarely makes enemies with others. Who offered this reward? Looking down again, the amount of the bounty is 500 million? 500 million? Are you kidding me? Different from the Navy's bounty system, the bounty in the dark world is very high. Orgrim's bounty in the Navy is only 3.743 million baileys, but he was marked in the dark world. A whole 10 billion? According to Shanks, even though he is the king of the 7 warlords, and coupled with his previous low profile, the bounty is indeed not very high. But here is his strength. He was a troublemaker in the New World and was not killed, so you give him 500 million belly. What does that mean? Could it be you who did it? What about specifically disgusting Shanks? Orgrim looked at Gangplank in a funny way and asked. "Mr. Hammer, are we not so bored?" Plank shook his head and smiled. After a short pause, before Orgrim could ask a question, Gangplank said, "Don't tell me, the person who issued the reward did not hide his identity. If he tells it, you will definitely not expect it." Could it be Bucky? Orgrim couldn't help but ask. After all, in my impression, although Bucky has a very good relationship with Shanks, on the surface, he always hates him. Bucky is fastidious and loves money as much as his life. His personality, this stingy behavior, seems to be very similar to him. Did Shanks find him in the East China Sea? Did he offend Uncle Bucky again? But can he afford 500 million Baileys? Bucky? Who is Bucky? Plank was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized, the former trainee crew member on the Roger ship in the East China Sea, right. Not him. Who is that? Ogrim didn't expect it this time and asked directly. Ha 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 ha, it's Navy hero Garp. Didn't you expect that? Gangplank laughed. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then asked him, why? We don't know why, but we heard that he went to the East China Sea and met Shanks in Windmill Village. Then for some reason, they got into a fight. Shanks ran away. Then Garp seemed to be angry and wanted to do something. Just like Shanks, in a fit of anger, he did not hide his identity and directly placed a bounty of 500 million belly on Shanks in the Dark World, Plank said somewhat amusedly. Isn't it outrageous and funny enough that King Shishibukai is offered a bounty by a naval hero in a dark world? The world is really big and full of wonders. Orgrim also laughed, he probably guessed what was going on. I guess it's because Kapuna is pretending to be his grandson, right? 500 million, maybe it's Cap's personal money, he, Orgrim smiled again and joked. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 525. Inside Mihawk's kendo gym. At this time, Mihawk was holding an ordinary saber and was fighting with his apprentice Andrest. As for Andrest, what he was holding in his hands was the demon sword Heart Crossing. I don't know if it's because he hasn't reached his peak height yet, or because Andrest's height is based on normal human conditions. In short, Andrest's height is not as conspicuous as Orgrim's. So at this moment, Andrest was holding the demon sword Heart Crossing, which seemed a little uncoordinated. The Heart Crossing was a little too long for him. But even though it's long, he still seems to be quite handy when using it. Cutting steel flash, Andrest murmured softly, and slashed forward with the heart in his hand. The dark-colored blade quickly brought up a wind blade, and attacked Mihawk. Mihawk's mouth had a hint of with a smile on his face, he raised the saber in his hand forward and directly broke the wind blade. The blade of the blade rubbed Shinto's blade and stabbed Andrest. Heart Crossing, Andrest didn't panic, he just shouted softly. The moment he finished speaking, the knife in Zindu seemed to have spirituality, and suddenly burst out a strong wind and turned into a shield, protecting Andreast in front of him. Mihawk did not go all out, otherwise Andreast would not be able to catch the sword. Therefore, the tip of his knife paused when it stabbed the wind shield. At the same time, a flash of light flashed in Andrest's eyes, and he instantly changed from holding the sword in one hand to holding the sword in both hands. He took a step forward with his feet, and the heart in his hand was slashed again, Itaki to me cut. Slow, Mihawk's expression didn't change, he just commented softly. At the same time, his body turned slightly, and the Zindu with the wind blade missed him. At the same time, the saber in Mihawk's hand also pierced the wind's shield, and the cold blade struck in Andreast's neck. Andrest looked bitter and said, "Master, are you going too fast?" "My speed is not fast, it is your knife that is slow." Mihawk shook his head and said. After a slight pause, Mihawk smiled again and said, "But don't be discouraged. Compared with the previous 2 days, you have improved again. It's because of your new ability to cross the heart. Have you got a handle on it? Does it understand what you mean? Release the violent wind and turn it into a shield for you." Andrest said happily after hearing this. "It seems like this. Although I can't communicate, it seems that Zindu can really understand what I mean." Mihawk nodded, not particularly surprised. Didn't Orgrim's Warhammer become smarter after eating the hot fruit? It can also automatically release a powerful flow of thermal energy and bounce it into Orgrim's hand. The most important partner of a swordsman is the sword in his hand. You need to communicate with Zindu more, and let Zindu become your arm. Mihawk said. Yes, Master, Andrest said. Well, although there has been progress, the slowness of the sword is still a weakness. Starting from today, I will swing the sword 3,000 times more. Mihawk thought for a while and then ordered. Andrest, who was still a little happy at first, had a bitter look on his face, but he also knew that Master Mihawk was very hard-hearted when it came to teaching swordsmanship. I guess it's useless to say anything, so I can only nod. At this moment, two figures, one large and one small, walked in from the door of the Kendo Hall. It was Beckman and Reiju. Beckman breathed at this time. There is a hint of lavender poisonous energy. This is rare for Beckman, who has mastered the poisonous fruit to a very precise level. Because most of the time, he will restrain the expression of this ability to avoid harming those around him. Companion. But now, the poisonous gas was brought up by the breath, and then, as if the airflow was guided, it did not spread at all, and floated towards Reiju. Reiju took this in with every breath. The poison gas was absorbed. When Orgrim saw this situation before, he said that Beckman had brought a humanoid self-propelled air purifier. But this was not for Beckman's own convenience or anything else. But he discovered that Reiju's physique is very special. She can become stronger by absorbing toxins. I really don't know what Geiji did. Reiju's physique is special. If she often eats highly poisonous, if you eat something, you can accumulate toxins in your body, and even burst out the toxins during combat to enhance your strength and poison your opponents. In performance, it seems a bit like a low-end version of the poisonous fruit. And Beckman is after discovering this problem, he began to deliberately bring Reiju with him. In most cases, he would cultivate Reiju's power in this way. And Reiju also liked to be with Beckman very much. For ordinary people, these things the gas is a deadly toxin. To Reiju, it is like perfume and is not unpleasant. Andre, Reiju smiled and waved to Andrest, saying hello. Compared with the remaining brothers in the kingdom of Germa, Reiju preferred her friends on Avalon, including Lily Ernst Mark. Andrest is her good friend. Andre also looked at Reiju, smiled and waved his hand. Why are you here? Mihawk also looked at Beckman and said, what's wrong? Orgrim is very lively today. I saw it was time for dinner, so I stopped by and asked you to come and eat together. Beckman said with a smile. Mihawk nodded and said, that's fine. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the house. Beckman was stunned for a moment and asked, what are you doing? Get rice, Mihawk said matter-of-factly. Beckman. Get rice? What the hell are you doing? This is the first time I heard that when you go to eat at someone else's place, you have to bring your own ingredients. Just bring the ingredients. Others may bring some specialties or something like that. You bring rice? I always feel like I can't keep up with Mihawk's amazing brain. Just when Beckman felt a little incredible, he saw Mihawk walking out of the house again. He seemed to have put down the previous knife and put the black knife yet on his back again. Sure enough, no matter where this guy goes, he never forgets to take his wife with him. At the same time, Mihawk was holding a bag of bulk rice in his hand, walked up to Beckman and said, let's go, try this rice. Beckman's face twitched slightly and he said, what are you doing? I grew it myself. Mihawk glanced at Beckman, then remembered to explain, and spoke. Beckman was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized, nodded, and said, yes, I have long heard that your interest is farming. Mihawk didn't explain anything, he just nodded casually. Then, the two adults and the two little guys walked towards Orgrim's courtyard. Before entering the courtyard, the two of them saw the fire in Orgrim's courtyard from a distance. The figure of Pans Fry, the giant cook, could not be blocked by the courtyard walls. At this time, he in the courtyard. As you get closer, you can hear the lively hustle and bustle in the courtyard. Mihawk and Beckman took Reiju and undressed into the courtyard. Sure enough, I saw the Sphinx holding an apple, chasing Lucci, yelling and cursing. Beckman was used to this kind of scene. There was no doubt that the Sphinx wanted Lucci to be shot while holding an apple, but Lucci didn't agree. Not far away from them, Lily, a little girl from the giant tribe, was gathered together with Robin, Yamato, Peggywan, and Runty, seeming to be chatting about something. The courtyard of Orgrim is very large, almost as big as a football field. Lucky and the others used to run here in the morning when they were young. Therefore, although there are giants and many people there, it does not actually seem crowded, and it is still a bit empty. Panzerfrei set up a bonfire directly on the ground, and it was obvious that he was preparing to have a barbecue. Queen Stacy was cutting some vegetables and fresh meat on the table set up in the courtyard. In front of her, standing in front of her was Hancock, the Empress of Amazon Lily. Hancock's expression looked a little flustered, and he hurriedly cracked open the egg, but the egg white, yolk and broken eggshell were all mixed together. Queen Stussy smiled and pointed at Hancock. Hancock listened to her instructions carefully and continued to break the eggs. Not far from the two beauties, there was something like a tablecloth spread on the ground, with several lumps of meat on it. Orgrim was swinging the clean doom hammer in his hand, very rhythmically. He was swinging a sledgehammer at the piece of meat. As soon as the hammer was hammered down, the piece of meat became more eroded, and then Gangplank, wearing gloves, stepped forward to straighten the piece of meat. As soon as he stopped his hand, Orgrim twisted his waist and brought down the hammer again. The two of them cooperated, their movements were very fast and full of rhythm. Reiju and Undressed went to play with Yamato and the others. Beckman walked towards Orgrim with some curiosity, while Mihawk thought for a while and walked to Queen Stussy, saying that he could help cut vegetables. "What are you doing?" "Hammer training," Beckman asked, standing next to Orgrim. Reiju ran away, and the poisonous gas no longer appeared between his words and breathing. "I am such a big shot, the pirate emperor of the New World. If I really want to practice hammer training, do I need this kind of thing?" Waving my hand, I led hundreds or even thousands of death row prisoners to line up at the pier, and I hammered them one by one, Orgrim said with a smile while swinging the hammer. After a short pause, before Beckman could ask any more questions, Orgrim continued, "Don't you understand? I'm a ball player. Oh, I'm a family man. I'm really good." Looking at Orgrim, it looked so stinky that Beckman couldn't help but want to laugh. "Gangplank," said Master Hammer, "be careful, don't be distracted. If you are distracted, my hand will be gone with this hammer." "Don't worry," Orgrim responded with a smile, raised his hand and hammered down again. "Those rotten pieces of meat, tendons." While they were chatting here, several more figures walked in from the door, including Rengar, Haas, Dai Peng, Hank and the others. They all carried large and small bags of fruit in their hands, with smiles on their faces, chatting while walking. These are almost the people who came to the banquet today. Anello, Barrett, Nightingale, Neiman, and others were not in Avalon and naturally did not come. Beckman saw that everyone seemed to be busy. Even Mihawk helped Queen Stussy cut vegetables, but he did nothing. Seems a little embarrassed. "What about that? Let me help you, Plank. Can you take a break?" Beckman stretched out his hand and stretched his sleeves. As soon as he finished speaking, Gangplank and Orgrim's expressions changed. "Don't you know what your Beckman is capable of? Don't you have any ideas in mind? Just in case you are interested. I came up and made a slight mistake. Today's banquet is going to be a diarrhea contest, right?" So Gangplank quickly shook his head and said, "It's okay, Second Master, I'm not tired." "You can rest." Orgrim also followed up and said, "Yeah, Beckman, Don't force yourself so much. You are so busy every day. Just have a good rest today. Don't you feel good about going over there to drink juice and smoke cigarettes? Beckman is a smart man, and he immediately understood what these two bastards meant. He said angrily, if you don't like it, I'll help others. My ability is perfectly controlled and there will be no problems. After saying that, he turned to look at Daipen and Rengar, and shouted, if you want to squeeze the juice from the fruit, I will peel it. You have to peel it, it will affect the taste. Rengar was startled. He turned his palms into sharp claws, pinched an apple in his palm, moved his fingers rapidly, and peeled off the skin of the apple in minutes. Second master, look at my skills, I'm a thief, I don't need help, just sit back and rest. Rengar said quickly. Daipeng also held the juicer and said, yes, no need to help, just rest. Hank took his machete and slashed and chopped all the watermelons around him and said, second master, don't worry, you don't need to peel the watermelons. Just take it and eat it. Beckman just felt that there was no place for him in this huge courtyard. What to do? Are both of them so guarded against me? Can't there be some trust between people? Alas, sad. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 526. The sun was setting on the beach in Wano country. Kaido is running ahead, Orgrim is chasing behind him. Dear brother. Brother Sien. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. The two of them walked in tandem, with smiles on their faces, as if running under the sunset was their lost youth. Just then, the world shattered. It's a dream. Kaido opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling with some confusion. After a long time, he came back to his senses, shook his head and said, it turned out to be a dream. Sitting up from the bed, Kaido looked at this magnificent palace, but he felt so empty, so lonely, and so cold. I wonder what brother Sien is doing? Will you occasionally think of me, this stupid brother? Alas, it's all because our status is too high and we are both too busy. We haven't seen each other for years. Kaido shook his head with some emotion. In his opinion, his relationship with Orgrim is very good. There is no reason why Orgrim doesn't want his own, right? I don't know, at this time Orgrim is completely, he didn't have this lonely, empty, and cold feeling. He was happily having a banquet with his friends. It was very lively. He stood up, tidied up casually, and walked out of the house. Today in Wano country the climate is very mild, and the cherry blossoms on Onigashima are also in bloom. But looking at this beautiful scenery, Kaido cannot be happy. He always feels like a loner. Yamato, Kaido thought of his daughter again at this time. When his daughter was here, Kaido always felt that this little family was annoying. He would be troubled every day, and he would sneak out at every turn. But now that she's gone, I miss her again occasionally. Quinn. Quinn, Kaido shouted twice towards the door. Not long after, Quinn's fat body came in from the outside. Boss Kaido, what are your orders? Quinn asked with a smile. Is there anything I need to do personally recently? Kaido asked directly. Quinn was stunned for a moment, thought about it for a moment, and said, it shouldn't be, right, the fire festival has come to an end, and there are no other big moves now, just leave it to us. Kaido nodded with satisfaction when he heard this, reached out and patted Quinn on the shoulder and said, very good, I'll leave Ghost Island to you. When Quinn heard this, he quickly asked Boss Kaido, are you going out to fight with someone again? Kaido is a guy who always likes to go out and cause trouble. Either he is someone who makes big news, or he simply likes to go out and cause trouble for others. If he provokes Whitebeard today, he will be in trouble with the Navy headquarters tomorrow. Kaido shook his head when he heard this and said, "No, I'm going to Avalon." Kaido felt that on the one hand, he should also contact Orgrim and meet his daughter Yamato. Haven't seen her for a long time, I miss her a little. Secondly, Orgrim recently captured Amazon Lily and took over the Nine Snakes pirates. Nowadays, Amazon Lily should have begun to be included in the Avalon system. When he gets this done, maybe there will be some big move, right? Then as an alliance partner, you have to link up with Orgrim to some extent, right? To link up, you need to know his thoughts? Let's talk this time. Avalon? Quinn murmured, and then asked, then should we say hello to Mr. Hammer first? Kaido waved his hand and said, no need, because of my relationship with Orgrim, there is no need to be so polite. I'm just afraid that after you go, Boss Kaido, Mr. Hammer will just go out for something, Quinn spoke. Kaido thought about it. It seemed that Orgrim had specifically told him this last time. But Kaido then thought again, he had nothing to do, so he shouldn't hold Orgrim back. If he had been informed first, given the relationship between the two of them, Orgrim would definitely have something big going on, so he had to put it down first and entertain this stupid brother of his. But, doesn't this make you look very ignorant? As an elder brother, you should consider the situation of your virtuous brother. Therefore, after Kaido hesitated for a while, he shook his head and said, it still doesn't work. If the good brother is not here, I will just check on Yamato. I shouldn't delay his affairs after listening to Kaido's words. Quinn felt it makes sense, so he nodded and said, okay, do we need to prepare anything? Ha 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 ha, no need. My brother Orgrim has a richer family than me now. We all rely on him to make a lot of money. Besides, my daughter will marry his son. We are all part of the same family. Where do you need to be so polite? Kaido said with a smile. Okay, don't worry, Boss Kaido, leave Wano country to us, Quinn nodded. Kaido didn't talk nonsense after that. He almost didn't use a boat when he went to sea. He suddenly exerted force on his feet, and his strong figure flew directly into the air. Then, he turned into a huge dragon and got into the clouds. And then, with a few swings, the figure disappeared. Quinn looked not surprised by his routine operations, turned around and left the palace, and continued to do his own thing. Just like that, Kaido again they made a surprise attack and went to find Orgrim empty-handed without bringing anything. At this time in Avalon, the bonfire party had already begun. Orgrim held a small fork in his hand and inserted it into the meatball was handed to Queen Stussy's mouth, and she said with a smile, come, try the meatballs I made with my own hands. With a smile on her face, Stussy took a bite and said, it's delicious. Just delicious. Orgrim nodded and said with satisfaction. Hancock, who was sitting next to Stussy, looked at the scene with some envy. Stussy seemed to notice Hancock's expression and reached out to pinch Grim's waist. Orgrim looked at her strangely, and with the look in Stussy's eyes, Orgrim suddenly realized. Come on, Hancock, try it too. Orgrim inserted another meatball and handed it to Hancock. Hancock's initially envious expression turned into surprise and satisfaction. Unlike Queen Stussy, he swallowed all the meatballs in his mouth and said happily, it's delicious. Ha 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 ha, if it tastes good, eat more, Orgrim laughed. Mihawk, who was sitting not far away and was eating barbecue, saw that scene, then turned to Beckman who was stirring the salad next to him and said, Beckman, Orgrim, there seems to be something wrong with Hancock over there? Beckman glanced at Mihawk strangely and said, did you just see it? I hadn't noticed it before. Mihawk said calmly. Yes, Hancock likes Orgrim very much, and if she and Orgrim get married, it will be a good thing for our Warhammer pirates. The millions of warriors on Nine Snake Island, can I have become a true person of my own? Before, I was a little worried about whether the Queen would, now it seems that it shouldn't be the case. Beckman nodded and said. Then, he noticed Mihawk looking at Orgrim thoughtfully. Beckman was startled and asked, could you be interested in Han? Is it Cook? After all, Hancock is quite charming. Beckman himself had to admit that Hancock was so beautiful. When he saw Hancock for the first time, he was amazed. Of course, this is just a normal manifestation of people's pursuit and appreciation of beauty. After Beckman finished admiring it, he had no other ideas. Mihawk glanced at Beckman strangely, then shook his head and said, no, what's wrong? Looking at Mihawk's still very calm expression, Beckman didn't doubt anything. After all, this guy has been sexually frigid for more than a year or two. So why are you asking? Beckman asked curiously. I was just thinking that Orgrim is going to have a second wife, Neiman seems to be having something with Dover, and what you said, what a shame. Mihawk sighed and said with some hatred. Beckman. What the hell are you doing? Why don't you have some skills? Are you qualified to speak to me? Work hard and don't hold you three brothers and sisters back. Mihawk patted Beckman on the shoulder and said seriously. Thank you so much, Beckman gritted his teeth and said. Nothing, as it should be. Mihawk said with a serious face. Beckman looked at this guy with some toothache, and then asked, have you never considered you? What do you think about me? Mihawk frowned slightly and asked. Now are both single, how did you have the courage to teach me? Beckman looked at Mihawk's serious face and couldn't help but ask. After hearing this, Mihawk looked at Beckman with very surprised eyes and asked, do you think we are the same? Isn't it the same? Could it be that you have a girlfriend secretly? Beckman asked in disbelief. No, Mihawk said very calmly. Na Nima, what's the difference between us? Beckman asked angrily. Do you want this for the rest of your life? Mihawk asked suddenly. Beckman was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, of course not. This is what makes us different, a matter of belief. Mihawk said very calmly. I can understand all of your words. They are connected together, so why can't I understand them? Beckman said doubtfully. The biggest difference between you and me is that I chose to be this way. I will dedicate my life to swordsmanship, but you are different. You are just forced to do this. This is the difference between us. Therefore, of course I have the right to worry about you and preach to you. This is the difference between belief and essence, Mihawk said very righteously. Beckman almost covered this bastard's face with the salad in his hand. Damn, let's talk about it. It means that you, Mihawk, chose to be single. And I am determined to follow my own path. I, Beckman, am a single person who is struggling and no one wants me. What the hell? Understand? Mihawk saw that Beckman was silent and added. Beckman moved his fingers inconspicuously, and a drop of lavender venom was stirred into the salad. Then, he handed the salad to Mihawk and said, eat well and shut your mouth. Mihawk sighed and said, good medicine tastes bitter but is good for the disease. After that, he didn't think much, picked up the salad and started eating. Beckman stood up and walked towards the side where the barbecue was placed. It is said that Mihawk had diarrhea for 3 consecutive days after that. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 527. New World, Dressrosa. Bullfighting Arena. Dressrosa's signature feature is known as the world's top arena. At least in the gladiator industry, the bullfighting arena is indeed filled with strong and powerful warriors, gathering the world's top gladiators. During the Rica royal family's rule, Dressrosa could be said to have relied on this arena to live. Belongs to the backbone of the national economy. But in the end, this is just a gladiatorial arena and cannot truly revitalize Dressrosa's economy. And after Doflamingo ascended the throne, bringing a lot of business in the dark world to Dressrosa. Dressrosa has also become Avalon's dark transit point. Avalon is a gathering of top dark masters. Dressrosa is the place where members of the middle-level dark world come most often. It's not that they don't like going to Avalon, it's mainly because they don't have enough skills. If you throw a brick at the port of Avalon and hit anyone casually, it could be a big boss in the dark world. The people who came to Dressrosa were far worse than them. Dark Holy Land is no joke. These people are not qualified to do business in Avalon. It can only be done in the secondary market of Dressrosa. However, even so, it is very good for Doflamingo, for the Don Quixote family, and for these little people in the dark world. Almost everyone can make a lot of money here. Although the people in the dark world are not as rampant and cruel as pirates. But in the final analysis, they are also people who hang their heads on their belts to beg for food. This kind of person naturally prefers bloody, cruel, and violent things. This is the attribute favored by the chaotic camp. And Doflamingo is a dark boss who is good at seizing opportunities and has a very sensitive sense of smell. Naturally, this opportunity will not be missed. During the reign of the Rica royal family, Dressrosa's bullfighting arena was still famous. But after all, it is more about viewing and entertainment. There are less bloody and cruel scenes. In most cases, there will be no life and death fights. After Doflamingo reached the top, the style of the bullfighting arena gradually began to move towards a bloody, violent, wild, and brutal path. Death row prisoners, pirates who came to cause trouble and were caught, outlaws, bounty hunters. Wait, in short, in the strange industry, those who yearn for blood, those who are forced to have no choice but to fall into the hands of the Don Quixote family. Most of them will be sent here to squeeze out their last remaining value. Here, they will fight for their lives, showing the most ferocious side of the gladiatorial sport to all audiences. Dead. Yes, people die here every day, a lot of them, and the methods and patterns of death are also all kinds of strange. There is nothing you can't imagine, nothing you can't see. In this arena, unless there is a grand event, there are no messy rules. It doesn't matter whether you are a group of people beating one person, or whether you are using some despicable and insidious means. But in the end, in every season, there is only one person who can become the king of gladiatorial games. That is the person who can fight to the end alive. However, the most cruel thing here is that in the final battle, the cotters of the Don Quixote family will participate in person. As the final gatekeeper boss. Guarding the title of King of Gladiators. Few can defeat the cotter of Don Quixote's family. Therefore, most gladiators will fall before this final level. If you want to survive, it may depend on whether the leaders of the Don Quixote family appreciate you enough. If you perform well enough, Doflamingo will even personally invite you to become a cotter of the Don Quixote family and rise to the top in one step. Most of the masters who take the initiative to participate in the gladiator competition actually come for this goal. As for the title of King of Gladiators, that's all. Maybe in certain circles, it will be recognized. But outside this circle, in the New World, who cares what kind of gladiatorial king you are? King of bullfights? The winner of the strongman competition? The real signboard depends on the cotters of the Don Quixote family. This name is truly valuable. At this time, in the bullfighting arena, the audience was packed with people. Businessmen in the dark world and gladiator enthusiasts from all over the world were cheering and shouting. At this time, hundreds of people were fighting in the arena. Although, only the person who survives and fights to the end can become the so-called king of gladiator. But in fact, although the death rate and disability rate here are very high, it does not mean that everyone will die every time. That is too much and will affect the enthusiasm of the players who take the initiative to participate in this kind of competition. Generally speaking, as long as you are not determined to admit defeat, or your opponent is particularly bloodthirsty, once you lie down and surrender, you still have a chance to survive. And here, there are people who perform wonderfully, and there are other ways out. For example, they are spotted by some little guys from the dark world, and they are recruited directly after the game. Doflamingo is also happy to sell these people, which can be regarded as extracting a residual value. In the auditorium, at the top, Doflamingo is sitting here, enjoying the game. At the same time, he was holding a phone in his hand and seemed to be chatting with someone. Is it too noisy? Is your place so lively? Orgrim's voice came from the phone bug and asked. Doflamingo smiled and said, this is Dressrosa, the fairy country of love and passion. You didn't come at the right time before. Now it is one of the two most lively times of the year in Dressrosa, the season when the two gladiator kings are born. The gladiator competition in Dressrosa is held twice a year, and every 3 months is a season. That is to say, 6 months of each year is the period of the gladiator competition, and the remaining half year is used for the development plan and development of the new season. Arrangements or something. And these 3 days of the final season are the two most lively golden 3 days in Dressrosa every year. Today is exactly such a day. What you said made me want to go and see it, Orgrim said with a smile on the phone bug. Phew, I am still envious that you are having a banquet, Doflamingo said with a smile. The two chatted casually for a few more words. Then Orgrim asked, where is Tesoro? Isn't he in Dressrosa? No, 2 days ago, we officially finalized the name of the entertainment city, called Golden City, Doflamingo said. Too tacky, Orgrim complained. Although in the original story, this project was named Golden City, in the end, it did seem too cliché. Orgrim naturally wanted to complain at this time. It just needs to be cliché, simple and crude, so that it can directly display this golden nobility. On the contrary, if it is too flashy, it will be inappropriate. Doflamingo explained. Then, without waiting for Orgrim to speak, he continued, this matter is not that simple to handle. Although the world government and you have reached cooperation, but in actual operation, there are still many problems to be solved. 2 days ago, Umit said that he had 2 spare adult island turtles on hand that could be used to support this project. Tetsalo went to see them in person and found out if they were suitable. Maybe we can build artificial islands on the backs of 2 island turtles, turning the originally planned floating island into a living island with more characteristics. Umit was originally the shipping king, and now he is the shipping king of Avalon. But his main business is still the smuggling shipping business. But just like the reason why Orgrim wanted to recruit him instead of getting rid of him, because of smuggling, this business is really not something that can be done casually. Umit has worked in it for many years before he can secure his position. Naturally, he has a lot of good resources in his hands, such as a large number of secret mobile warehouses. Among them, island turtles are a very high-quality mysterious island. As long as they are not unlucky and hit by others, they are almost impossible to be found by their opponents. Now, Umit saw that the big boss Orgrim attached so much importance to the Golden City for this project. In order to please Orgrim and increase his own importance, he was prepared to support Tesalo and Doflamingo without hesitation. He prepared the site before taking action. Orgrim Rem also probably understood what Doflamingo meant, and said with a smile, it's a big project anyway, so you should pay more attention to it. Phew, is this the pattern of the big boss? Just a few instructions, where these little brothers are going to be exhausted. Doflamingo also laughed and teased Orgrim. Orgrim laughed and said, gee ha, one family, what do 2 families say? Where's Neiman? How was it at your place? When Doflamingo heard Orgrim mention Neiman, he felt a little weird. There was always the feeling that unruly people wanted to harm me. He raised his eyes and looked at a wild arena where flesh and blood were flying everywhere. He smiled and said, okay, but Mr. Chui, maybe Neiman will surpass you. What's the meaning? Orgrim asked a little strangely. Judging from my experience, Neiman is probably just one step away from awakening her devil fruit power, Doflamingo said softly. Orgrim was silent for a moment after hearing this. It's so uncomfortable. Brother. The devil fruit ability is not awakened by anyone who is stronger. Orgrim is more powerful than him. Is Brother Lumingo more than twice as powerful? I guess he can beat him if he really makes a move. But it just so happens that Doflamingo has awakened his thread fruit long ago. And Orgrim, I can only feel envious and jealous. Sphinx, it's like being cheated, awakening quickly. Now, his sister Neiman is about to reach this point. But as a captain, he is still here scratching his head. Can he not feel uncomfortable? Is there any trick? Orgrim asked bitterly. Not really, maybe this one, I think it depends on chance and ability. They say that animal abilities are the easiest to awaken. Maybe they are not joking. The more powerful an ability is like yours, the more difficult it is to awaken it. On the contrary, the other abilities seem to be easier. Doflamingo thought for a moment and then said. Newgate wakes up too, Orgrim complained. He had been the strongest for so many years before he awakened before the battle with you. Even many people in the sea felt that a large part of the reason why he awakened his ability was because of the pressure you brought. You're still young, don't worry, Doflamingo comforted with a smile. Alas, in short, I am just envious, Orgrim said. At this moment, the atmosphere in the arena became lively again, with cheers and applause filling the airs, one wave after another. Lord Neiman. Neiman. Power and glory. Blood and thunder. Listening to Doflamingo's enthusiastic and noisy voice, Orgrim asked in surprise, what's going on? I seem to hear Neiman's name. That's right, Neiman is about to appear, Doflamingo smiled and said. I arranged for my sister to be your secretary, but she showed up in the arena? Young master? What are you doing? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 528. Orgrim was very confused at this time. I sent my sister there to let you cultivate your relationship. Wouldn't it be better to let her be your money-making tool? However, before Orgrim could react from this confusion, he could not speak. That bastard Doflamingo seemed to have anticipated the situation on his side. He said directly, okay, Neiman is about to appear. I won't tell you any more. I'm going to support her. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, Doflamingo hung up the phone. Hello? Hello, only Orgrim reacted and shouted twice, but it was of no use. Dry, Orgrim cursed. But soon, he laughed again and shook his head helplessly. He once again participated in the lively banquet in the courtyard. On the other side, in the bullfighting arena in Dressrosa. I don't know if Doflamingo redesigned it here, or if the arena originally had this function. In short, when the audience's cheers reached their peak, Neiman began to be displayed on the big screen of the arena. Photos. The combination of strong muscles and angelic face is simply unspeakable. But just as Orgrim speculated, Neiman is very popular among the general population. Because most people, in this world, do not care about appearance, but strength is the most important thing. Neiman, without a doubt, is full of power. It is said that in Amazon Lily, Neiman is second only to the Empress. Where is Boya Hancock's beauty? But this kind of person obviously cannot enter Orgrim's sight. He wouldn't let Neiman find a good-for-nothing as a partner. But most people who have reached this level have their own power. Unless Orgrim forces her, or wants to cling to the power behind Neiman, who would fall in love with a beauty with a figure like Neiman? This is where Orgrim struggles. Accompanied by cheers and applause, the floor of the arena was opened, and then an elevator platform slowly rose from the floor of the arena. First, a beautiful face emerged from the ground. Then, a strong figure slowly appeared together. At this time, Neiman was wearing a sports vest and shorts, and her muscles were a bit stronger than Orgrim's. They were shiny and even a little dazzling under the sun. There may be many incongruities in her body, but it is undeniable that she has a healthy and powerful beauty. That is the instinctive aesthetic of human beings pursuing powerfulness. Each hand carries a pair of finger tigers. The finger tiger seems to be made of fine iron, and it is extremely ferocious. The punches on it are estimated to be able to break through the bones with one punch. And coupled with Neiman's incomparable power, maybe he can beat you into a pulp with your bones. Last season, after Lord Neiman participated in the gladiatorial competition, it seemed that no king of gladiatorial games was born. This time, Lord Neiman is still here, so there won't be any king of gladiatorial games, right? After all, Lady Neiman has very high standards, so it's normal to look down on these people. No, Lady Neiman is the sister of the King of Night. It's strange that you don't have high vision. But why, despite the fact that the mortality rate has increased a lot and the possibility of winning the championship has also dropped a lot, the participation rate of free agents has increased very much this season. Are there too many people? Not only free gladiators, but also many pirates are participating. Maybe because, the reward given by the Don Quixote family is very high this time. High? How high can it be? It's just 2 devil fruits. What you said is very valuable, are you? Ha ha ha, what a joke, I'm a boat runner under Sir Umit. It turns out he is an Avalon type man, so disrespectful. While several businessmen from the dark world were bragging, a gladiator who looked a little old and vicissitude said it's because Lord Neiman and the previous cotters of the Don Quixote family represent their identities are different. No matter what they were before, they were just members of the Don Quixote family. And even though Lord Neiman is now a member of the Don Quixote family, who on the sea doesn't know that Lord Neiman is the pirate emperor's sister? What kind of opportunity would it be if I could get Lord Neiman's appreciation? It is not impossible to directly join the Warhammer pirates and become a small cotter. For outlaws, this is a road to success. If I were 10 years younger, I would sign up. No matter how the original rules are arranged. In short, in the current arena, you don't have to wait until there is only one person standing before sending cotters to the stage. This is not how the title of King of Gladiator is obtained. Neiman, when it came on stage, the arena also entered a stage of intense heat. Most of the trash fish had been killed. Although the remaining ones were mostly trash fish, they were somewhat capable. After that, what could be done in the arena? When the cotters are guarding the gate, the one who fights alive to the end is the king of the gladiatorial battle. To put it simply, it is still a chaotic battle. And if you want to win Neiman's favor, it is impossible to be a licking dog. You have to show yourself, it only depends on your ability. After Neiman appeared on the stage, the originally restless arena became quiet. All the gladiators seemed to have stopped fighting and looked at Neiman in perfect harmony with their opponents, with fiery eyes. Neiman is usually a very kind person with no airs. But now, there is an arrogant look on her face. She moved her fingers a little, turned her head left and right, and said, "Old rules, no matter how you use them, whoever can defeat me, knock me down, and get my recognition will be recommended by me to join the Warhammer pirates." As soon as she finished speaking, the eyes of the gladiators on the field became even more intense. Looking at this scene, Neiman said with a smile on her lips, "But, the Warhammer pirates never want to, it's useless, so show your value to your heart's content. Use your strength to seize glory, use blood and thunder to please me. Let's fight. Lady Neiman, if I accidentally hurt you or defeated you, wouldn't I have to settle the consequences?" Suddenly there was a pirate, holding a big knife, and asked in a deep voice. Neiman looked at this guy and said with a smile, "No, on the contrary, the more serious the injury to me, the more serious I will be. Appreciate him. In our Warhammer pirates, ability and strength have always been king." As soon as she finished speaking, a ruthless look flashed in the pirate's eyes. Without saying a word, he used his foot force and pounced directly on Neiman. He raised his hand and slashed Neiman's head with a knife. Mean, everyone in the audience cursed. But pirates, what's wrong with being mean? It should be said that this is normal operation. At the same time, there are no rules in this arena. The winner takes all. However, Neiman's expression, but he was very calm. He stepped slightly, his figure turned casually, and dodged the knife. At the same time, he pinched his left hand suddenly. The muscles of his already strong arm tightened instantly. The next second, the fist hit the pirate's chest with his finger. The powerful muscle power burst out the moment it came into contact with the pirate's chest. It was obviously not an impact fruit, but the strength was like an impact, penetrating the pirate's eyes bulged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with internal organs fragments. He staggered and fell down. Obviously, you are not worthy of me settling the score with you. Neiman shook off the blood in her hands and said calmly. However, her calm tone had a bit of a cold feeling. There are thousands of people with different faces, but in front of Orgrim, she seems to have always been a cold person. An obedient and well-behaved sister. But in front of most people, Neiman is a powerful and evil pirate. At the moment when the pirate fell, everyone in the arena seemed to have a tacit understanding. They no longer wanted to talk to each other. Fighting, they exerted their strength at the same time, and pounced on Neiman. Neiman's eyes flashed with excitement, and she whispered softly, "This is how it must be, this is how it must be, come, bring me blood and pleasure." Before coming to the Don Quixote family, Neiman felt that she had reached a bottleneck. She was one step away from awakening the power of the devil fruit. After coming to the Don Quixote family, she and Doflamingo, the senior, we communicated many times, and gained something. Finally, she noticed the arena, which seemed to be a meat grinder, and in this place, through constant actual combat, it seemed that she could be more stimulated to achieve breakthroughs in her abilities. Therefore, she is coming. Muscle explosion full strengthening, N.I. Man shouted loudly. The moment she finished speaking, the already very strong muscles on her body swelled again. Then, facing the siege of dozens of people, she had no intention of retreating. With rich combat experience and strong strength, in this chaotic battle, one can fight against many and never fall behind. Almost every punch can take away half of the opponent's life if he hits it. If you are unlucky, she would be dead if hit directly. As the number of times she punched increased, her unparalleled aura was also rising. Even in the audience, many people felt extremely strong pressure, fearing that Neiman accidentally killed them too. At the same time, if you look closely, you will find that every time Neiman punches, the muscles on her body seem to become stronger. At first, there was no what's obvious, but as the battle becomes more and more intense, Neiman's body becomes stronger and stronger, almost becoming a muscle monster. Sitting in the uppermost auditorium, Doflamingo's eyes light up. Ludion, the smile at the corner of his mouth is getting stronger and stronger. Is this the last savings? Accumulating abilities to the extreme, fighting in this way will bring great pressure, right? Can your body really bear it? As expected of Orgrim's sister, she has such cruelty in her bones, Doflamingo thought in his heart. Pressure is not brought to Neiman by her opponents. It was Neiman who continued to forcibly enhance her abilities, squeezed herself to the limit, and put strong pressure on herself. Drink! Neiman shouted violently, and a steel knife struck her arm with an armed look. But the strong muscles were already harder than steel at this time, and the sharp blade could not cut through at all. Impossible, the gladiator said in horror. Before he could express his thoughts, Neiman's huge fist punched him in the chest with a powerful punch. This feeling is like a person hitting a solid iron cannonball that explodes at high speed. His whole body was blown apart by Neiman's punch. That feeling of flesh and blood exploding into fireworks and minced meat flying out. After beating this man, the powerful punching power seemed to have not been fully vented. It still brought strong pressure and knocked out several gladiators around him. Neiman's eyes also turned scarlet at this time. In the audience, Doflamingo suddenly stood up, reached out and grabbed the air, and his figure flew directly into the air. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 529. At this time, Neiman seemed to be completely red-eyed. It is obvious that the opponent is not very strong, and can even be said to be very weak. But unfortunately, a person like her who can be said to be experienced in hundreds of battles is so jealous in a place like this. Crazy and violent. The powerful momentum crushed them, and an invincible feeling arose in the hearts of the gladiators. Don't want, a gladiator shouted in horror, as if he wanted to throw away the blade in his hand and surrender. But Neiman was like a crazy beast. Before he even made a move, the extremely strong figure had already hit him. That guy's body. The powerful force turned half of his body into flesh. Then, the body was smashed out like a cannonball. It hit the wall at the edge of the arena. The wall was broken into pieces. And that guy was completely turned into a flesh and blood sticker, printed on the wall. Blood, water, and flesh slowly slid down the wall. The next moment, Neiman grabbed the shoulders of a gladiator with both hands. Spare your life, the gladiator couldn't resist this power and wailed. But the moment the words fell, Neiman had already brutally tore this unfortunate guy alive. In just a short moment, the crazy Neiman was like a storm. Swept through the entire arena, killing almost all the gladiators. And the methods were extremely cruel and bloody. This kind of mania, cruelty, and violence seemed to stimulate the people in the audience. Some people couldn't stand this kind of scene and vomited directly. Some people even fainted from being frightened. But there were still a large number of people with red eyes, extremely excited, waving their arms, and kept shouting. Humanity, the most essential evil, was clearly evident at this moment. The last surviving gladiator's legs were weak and he sat slumped on the ground, unable to stand up at all. The blade in his hand had long been thrown away. Looking at Neiman's scarlet eyes glanced towards him. It was like the gaze of death, making him feel cold all over. His pants instantly became wet. No. Don't want, do not come, admit defeat, you win. The gladiator was supporting the ground with his hands, trying to move back in a panic, and begging in panic. But Neiman seemed to be unable to hear these words at all. The violent momentum on his body had nowhere to vent, and the prey in front of him, shivering. Kill him. Crush him. Twist his head off. The bloodthirsty guys in the audience roared. The huge fist suddenly fell down, like Orgrim's war hammer, from top to bottom, killing the last unlucky gladiator. This with one punch, his head was like a tack, being hit close to the chest by Neiman's iron fist. The chest couldn't bear the pressure and exploded directly. Blood, flesh, broken bones, etc. Scenes of intertwining and intertwining. The entire arena was plunged into a manic boil. Lord Neiman. Valkyrie of Avalon. No one survived. But although the cheers became more and more wild, the inexplicable restlessness and madness in Neiman's heart still had not been vented. The opponent was really too weak, and at this last moment, he always felt a little worse. Not enough. Neiman roared angrily. Not enough. I want more blood, more power, and stronger opponents. Neiman shouted loudly. The moment she finished speaking, she looked towards the audience with scarlet eyes. Everyone who was swept by her gaze was startled, and that kind of fear seemed to arise spontaneously. I felt the despair of those unlucky gladiators just now. No. No way. Drink, Neiman roared angrily, exerting force with her feet, and her figure seemed to be about to rush towards the audience, killing everyone, asking for more blood, to water the flower of the beast in her heart. At this moment, Doflamingo the figure fell from the sky, with a powerful armed domineering look on its feet. Without any mercy, it landed on Neiman's head. Die, Neiman didn't care who came at this time. She raised her hand and punched Doflamingo's Dowda shoes. From the beginning to the end, she did not use any domineering power. It was pure ability that exploded. It was the same this time. The powerful boxing force slammed into Doflamingo's feet. Doflamingo's face changed, and he couldn't help but think Master Hammer said back then. In the competition of strength, he lost to Ni Man. Is it true? Before he could think about it, the powerful force directly flew him away, and his figure hit the wall of the arena. But unlike the guy who turned into flesh, Doflamingo, despite his strength, he couldn't make it to the top level, but he was also a true first-class master. His feet landed on the wall first, and the powerful kinetic energy and power were transmitted instantly, directly crushing the wall made of huge rocks. Rocks flew, even injuring a few unlucky guys in the audience behind. But Doflamingo didn't mean to care about them, and stared at Neiman. Not enough. Be stronger. Neiman yelled at Doflamingo. The three siblings are all monsters, Doflamingo thought secretly in distress. But he also knew that Neiman was at the threshold at this time, and whether she could break through the bottleneck might be the key to it. She needed a catalyst, and this catalyst was obviously myself. This is not Avalon, where there are many strong men. The only one who can be Neiman's opponent is myself. At this time, if I can't do it, can I still be worthy of Neiman and my own identity? I won't do it in the future either. So I can explain it to Lord Hammer. After all, who knows, if this time fails, how many years will Neiman have to wait? Thinking of this, Doflamingo also tried his best, exerting force with his feet, and his figure was like Tianyaksha, and he pounced to Neiman. Whip, Doflamingo suddenly swung his hand forward, and a whip condensed with white threads was whipped directly towards Neiman. Neiman was very manic at this time, and he didn't want to play with you at all. He raised his hand to in the first block, the whip hit Neiman's strong arm muscles. The arm that could withstand the steel knife just now was instantly opened by the whip, and a large amount of blood spurted out. But Ni Man didn't care, he wrapped his arm fiercely, wrapped the whip directly around his arm, pulled back, pulled the whip, and pulled Doflamingo towards him. At the same time, with the other hand, he charged up and punched Doflamingo's flying figure with all his strength. Before his arm could be straightened, the wind of the punch had already blasted the air. If Doflamingo followed normal combat wisdom, Doflamingo would definitely cut off the whip and change positions. It would be impossible to face him head-on. But the situation at this time was special, and he also knew that what Neiman wanted was catharsis and a collision of strength. So he also tried his best, with a look in his eyes. A ruthless, armed and domineering aura instantly covered his whole body, turning his whole body into a black iron lump. He raised his leg and stepped on Neiman's unstoppable fist. Tread the line enough, Doflamingo shouted violently. His feet were instantly covered by white lines, which once again enhanced his ability to resist blows. The next moment, his foot collided with Neiman's fist. Boom! A powerful impact instantly erupted from where the two fists and feet met. Since Neiman did not use any domineering power, there was no hegemonic counterattack. It's just the aftermath of powerful power being vented. In an instant, all the corpses in the arena were squeezed and thrown away. The aftermath brought these corpses and hit the wall one after another. A human-shaped sticker decorated the solid wall of the arena. It was precisely because of the solid enough wall support that the surrounding spectators were not hurt. At the same time, Doflamingo, the king of Dressrosa, enters the scene and fights Neiman head-on. It also brought the already very manic atmosphere of the arena to a new climax again. Young master. Tianyaksha. Your Majesty Shichibukai. Valkyrie of Avalon. King Kong Barbie. The King of Gladiators. Amidst the shouts, Doflamingo took the lead in changing his moves, because he really couldn't withstand the punch. He let go of his feet, and with the help of his strength, he quickly made 2 false grabs in the air, taking away Teen Yaksha's advantage. It was used to the extreme, completing a rotation and twist in the fastest and shortest time in the smallest space. At the same time, the leg that had just been released also made a sweep and kicked directly towards Neiman's arm. The speed quickly, Ling Neiman didn't react at all. She was directly kicked by Doflamingo on her left arm. The powerful kick caused her to slide sideways. Doflamingo's feet were covered with bandages. The tight invisible thread directly cut through Neiman's tight muscles, and scraped off a layer of flesh and blood like a knife. However, Neiman seemed not to feel the pain at all. She exerted force under her feet and stopped. He stopped his slide and grabbed Doflamingo's kick. Doflamingo was faster and made another false grab in the air. I don't know what he grabbed. In short, it was with the help of strength, he instantly opened the distance between himself and Neiman, avoiding her palm. After a series of attacks, Doflamingo just didn't hit the ground. He deserves to be called Tenayasha. Didn't the head come in vain? It wasn't until there was a gap that Doflamingo landed firmly on his feet. He looked at Neiman's wound with a surprised expression. There, he had cut off the wound just now. The flesh and blood wounds have almost healed. No, not Orgrim's kind of healing. It feels like a new muscle has grown. This is manifestation of ability awakening? Are muscle fruits a manifestation of this awakening? Doflamingo thought in great surprise. If this is really the case, then Neiman, isn't it the second Orgrim? An unbeatable muscle monster? Can muscles be grown indefinitely before physical exertion is exhausted? Fill an injury? Just when he was thinking about this, Neiman roared again, and her already swollen muscles suddenly swelled again, turning into the feeling of a meat tank, roaring towards Doflamingo. Coming on the run. Doflamingo was very helpless, but he still chose to go head-on. Seeing Neiman's huge muscular fist bursting the air and hitting him with powerful punch pressure, Doflamingo quickly stretched his hands forward and released a large number of dense white lines. At the same time, the arm domineering force also extended out, turning the white line into a black line instantly. Heavy spider's nest, Doflamingo said with a flash of light under his orange sunglasses. 2 spider webs strengthened by domineering were blocked in front of him, and Neiman's iron fist hit them instantly. The powerful force pulled them. He grabbed the first spider web, bumped into the second spider web, and finally slowly stopped his punch. But he didn't really stop. A solemn look appeared on Doflamingo's face, and the threads in his body, the power of the fruit, continued to explode, constantly repairing the spider web that was about to break. But Neiman's fist still approached him slowly and powerfully. At the same time, Neiman's strong figure was also shrinking visibly to the naked eye. His muscles were shrinking. It is constantly collapsing, solidifying, and adjusting into the body. It is obvious that the body is shrinking, but Doflamingo feels the increase in power. This is, Doflamingo whispered softly. The moment his words fell, the scarlet color in Neiman's eyes had completely disappeared, and there was no longer that crazy feeling. At the same time, what appeared in Doflamingo's side was a real beauty. The top-notch kind, both in figure and appearance. It's that elastic sports top, a little baggy, but it becomes even sexier. Neiman, Doflamingo whispered in surprise. Then, when punching, the powerful force seemed to burst out in an instant. The 2 spider webs exploded directly, and Doflamingo was punched by the real beauty Neiman. On his stomach, he vomited a mouthful of old blood, and his figure flew out directly, like a cannonball, hitting the wall of the arena. Fortunately, he was strong, so he did not turn into flesh, but was directly smashed into the boulder. Neiman's face turned red at this time, and she said very embarrassedly, "Sorry, I can't hold it in anymore." Doflamingo, who felt that all his bones were cracked, was trapped in the boulder. He endured the pain and grinned gracefully, "It doesn't matter, I can hold on." But in his heart, there are 10,000 alpacas running back and forth. Neiman has become a top beauty. But this young master can't beat her? How can this be calculated? Do you want to eat soft rice? The past few days have been really busy. There is only one update today. I will be able to go home in a few days and will be back to normal by then. Dear bosses, please be patient. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 530. In the eternal night sea, in the dedicated port of the dark Holy Land, Avalon. Orgrim is sitting on the stone pier in the dock at this time. He had a cigar in his mouth and looked very casual, as if he was waiting for someone. Not far from him, the little Lolita Sphinx was also squatting on the ground, fiddling with her gothic Lolita shoes. "What are you doing?" Orgrim exhaled a puff of smoke and asked. The Sphinx tied his shoelaces and said, "Humph, enhance my melee ability." Done. After finishing speaking, the Sphinx stood up and said happily. Then, she stretched out her little feet in front of Orgrim in a showy way, and said in a disgusting manner, "Did you see it?" Orgrim observed it for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I didn't see it." "Is there any change?" "You're right if you didn't see it," Sphinx said happily. As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her leg and kicked Orgrim in the chest. Orgrim was smoking a cigarette, and he didn't expect that this bastard Loli would suddenly attack. At close range, there was no room to hide, and he was kicked in the chest by the Sphinx with a confused expression. "You bastard," Orgrim cursed. Before he finished speaking, an explosion exploded directly from his chest, knocking Orgrim over from the stone pier and sitting on the ground. His chest was smoky and burnt black, and the cigar he was biting at the corner of his mouth was broken in half. "Ha ha ha ha," the Sphinx laughed, and then asked stinkingly, "How is it?" "I want your whole family to fly into the sky and explode with kicks." Orgrim had a hint of anger in his eyes. He took out half of the cigar from his mouth and threw it on the ground. Then he stood up holding the stone pillar and grabbed the bastard Lolita Sphinx. "You bastard, your butt will be itchy if you don't spank it for 3 days, right? What to do? Don't you know this is dangerous?" Orgrim grabbed the Sphinx's ankles, cursed and lifted her up. "Let me go, you bastard. Do you want to peek under my skirt?" The Sphinx covered her lowly skirt with both hands and cursed in embarrassment. "You deserve a beating." Orgrim sat down on the stone pier again, pushed the Sphinx on his legs with his backhand, and slapped her pert little butt with a full rhythm. "I'll shoot you in the head," the Sphinx struggled and cursed. But it was no use. "You drive the 6-type iron block every day, and I don't use the maximum explosive kick. There is no way it can hurt you, right? Let me go." "Don't I want to lose face," the Sphinx struggled with tears in his eyes. "This is no reason for you to attack me casually." "Bastard Loli," Orgrim slapped her on the butt twice again with his backhand. After making a fuss for a while, Sphinx covered her butt and stood beside Orgrim with an unhappy look on her face, while Orgrim also lit his cigar again at this time. Looking at the Sphinx's expression of "I'm angry, I'm about to admit my mistake," Orgrim wanted to laugh a little. This little Loli is so desperate to save face and suffer the consequences. Posture. Orgrim no longer shared her familiarity, and pretended to comment seriously, "Well, it's pretty good. At least it's a bit of a surprise. If it's used for offense, it's a little lacking. But if it's used unexpectedly during defense, it might have a miraculous effect." There was no apology or anything else. He just changed the topic casually and complimented the little guy Sphinx. Then, the original angry look of the Sphinx dissipated in an instant. With a proud and disgusting expression on her face, She held up her neatly arranged airport and said arrogantly, hey, you are very discerning. You don't need me as a means of attack. I'm not bad. This kind of offensive method is already very good as a defensive move. The little guy is so easy to coax, Orgrim thought a little funny. He bragged about it for a long time, and Orgrim responded with a very perfunctory oh. The Sphinx had an expression on her face that said, I am the most powerful woman in the world. But after a while, the little guy said impatiently, what's going on with that guy Dover? Didn't he say he would be here soon? I've been waiting for him for a long time. What are you waiting for him to do? Orgrim asked with a smile. Yes, Doflamingo said not long ago that he would come to Avalon, and today is the day he will arrive. When he contacted him not long ago, he said that he would soon arrive at the Avalon Islands. So Orgrim came to pick him up. After all, Doflamingo said that he came with Neiman. At the same time, he seemed to have suffered some injuries and wanted to see Dr. Nightingale. Nightingale he had returned from Melview half a month ago. But he would not stay in Avalon for long. Caesar and Indigo spent most of their time in Melview doing research. Nightingale belongs to the type of running on both sides. So it is normal for him to appear anywhere. After Orgrim heard that Doflamingo was injured, he was very surprised. He didn't know who was so bold and dared to hurt Doflamingo. Ming Ge? Don't you know that Doflamingo is the person that I, Orgrim, protect? So Orgrim questioned Doflamingo, wanting to find this daring guy, and deal with it immediately. Power. However, Doflamingo did not answer this question, and even told Orgrim not to investigate and not to interfere. Orgrim thought to himself, maybe Doflamingo wants to regain his position? Therefore, there was no further questioning. As for the investigation, he originally wanted to let Plank go find out the news, but in the end, he still did not do so. Give that guy Dover some face. If he really can't handle it later, he can take action himself. Orgrim received the news and came to greet Doflamingo. What Sphinx said was just to join in the fun, and Orgrim didn't know what she was going to do. There is nothing to do. Being idle is also idle, Sphinx pouted. After a slight pause, she said in a snarky tone, don't think that you are the only one who has a good relationship with Dover. I, the Sphinx, also have friends all over the world. Gee ha 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 ha. Orgrim laughed. Coming, the Sphinx suddenly saw the Don Quixote family's ship appearing on the sea level. The leader was a saucy pink flamingo. There is no doubt that such a saucy ship must be it belongs to this guy Doflamingo. Orgrim exhaled a puff of smoke and grinned, it's finally here. With that said, he stood up, ready to stretch or something. But at this moment, his expression suddenly froze. His eyes looked towards the clouds in the sky, where there was a huge figure, appearing and disappearing. Isn't it? Orgrim thought with some toothache. Probably not. I said hello to him last time. Please tell me in advance before he comes. This guy Kaido probably won't, Orgrim quickly comforted himself. But he didn't even think clearly, when he saw a huge ferocious dragon's head suddenly poked out from the clouds. Who is it if it's not Kaido? Kaido also looked at the figure of Orgrim on the port with a surprised look on his face, and laughed and said, ha 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 ha, my dear brother Orgrim, you and I are really in tune with each other. I wanted to give you a surprise. I didn't expect you to be waiting for me, brother you, at the port. Listening to Kaido's passionate words, Orgrim's face twitched slightly, but due to the relationship, he still forced a smile and said, this is not what a coincidence, boss Kaido, why are you here? I have already said that you must say hello in advance. What if I am away for something? Doesn't it mean that your trip is in vain? How embarrassing is this? I didn't even prepare a banquet or anything. Kaido quickly transformed into a human form from the air, flew down in the port, stepped forward and hugged Orgrim, patted Orgrim on the shoulder, and said enthusiastically, ha 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 ha, brother, I have indeed thought about it, but I also feel that it would be bad if it delayed your affairs. If you are really unlucky and don't see me, it doesn't matter. Brother, I can drop by to see Andre and Yamato. Orgrim chatted with Kaido for a while, pretending to be affectionate, and learned that this bastard just had nothing to do, so he came to him to talk to him about life when he was bored. I feel even more frustrated, you are Kaido. Shouldn't you commit suicide if you are bored? Dear brother, you are here. Kaido also saw that Orgrim was not here to greet him, but he didn't mind and asked directly. Orgrim forced a smile, pointed at the flamingo that was approaching rapidly in the distance, and said, I'm waiting for Dover. This guy was injured by someone. Come to Avalon to find him. Nightingale came for medical treatment. When Kaido heard this, he immediately became angry and said in a deep voice, there are still such people in the New World. Who doesn't know that Joker is your brother? Who doesn't know that Joker is my good friend, Kaido, an important partner? If you dare to provoke him, you are provoking the two of us. Dear brother, this matter can't be forgotten, let's work together. Orgrim didn't want to do anything with Kaido at all, so before Kaido could finish his words, Orgrim quickly said, then what? No need, boss Kaido, I don't think Dover will do anything. I want to say more, maybe because I want to regain my position. How can that work? Too out of touch? I'll ask later. Brother, I will help Dover catch that bastard and kill him, Kaido said with great loyalty as if he was obligated to do so. You are the one who keeps to yourself the most. Could you please go out a little bit? Orgrim roared in his heart. At the same time, Doflamingo's flamingo also slowly stopped in the port. Orgrim didn't even walk over, but Kaido looking unhappy, he cursed and walked towards the flamingo. I saw that the flamingo did not put down the usual ship ladder, but a flat slope ladder. In layman's terms, it is barrier-free access. Then, Doflamingo was seen sitting in a wheelchair, slowly sliding down the passage with an awkward expression. Orgrim, Kaido, and Sphinx were all shocked. Before Orgrim and Kaido could say anything, the Sphinx exploded. Very excited, he stepped forward and grabbed Doflamingo's wheelchair, and asked angrily, Dover. Who is it? Who is it? Beat you up like this? How can you still walk with that arrogant 8-figure step? Without that kind of step, you have no soul. Doflamingo's face twitched a little, having you chatting like this of? Can you say something nice? Kaido also stepped forward angrily and asked in an equally irritable manner, yes, Joker, who did it? Tell me, I will help you get revenge. This, Doflamingo looked very embarrassed and didn't know what to say. At this moment, a crisp voice, with a hint of shyness and embarrassment, came from the ship not far away. It's me, did it accidentally. Kaido turned his head and looked up when he heard the sound, and saw an unparalleled beauty with a good figure slowly walking down the ship's ladder. This face looks a bit familiar, but why can't I remember it? Where have I seen it? Who are you? Dare to hurt Joker? Don't you take me and brother Orgrim seriously, Kaido frowned and said. Don't think that because you are a woman, I don't dare to hit you.